Tampering is reportedly required to compete and part of the reason spring games are being canceled. This, according to SI.com. Caleb, what can be done about tampering? Because it very well could be at the heart of Ricky Gibson entering the transfer portal.
Well, so tampering, Pete Nakos of On 3 Sports has broken this down, and he's basically done a bunch of surveys among anonymous Power 4 personnel, staffers, and NIL collectives. And he actually included prospective agents, and all of this was kind of on the condition of anonymity. Basically, what's happening is that Group of 5 schools have been tampering with each other even more than Power 5 schools have, but Power 5 schools have gotten involved. And one example that was used was former Tulane starting quarterback Darian Mensah entered the transfer portal the Monday it opened and was with Duke 2 days later. There's no word on whether or not Mensah's agents were in contact with Duke, but within 48 hours, he negotiated one of the biggest NIL deals in college football to transfer. It's very clear that he negotiated that deal to most people that that he was negotiating that before he transferred. Basically, somebody said, a Big Ten staffer said, agents are calling you with a list of guys currently on rosters, and they're saying, hey, here's my list of 30 guys. Let me know if you're interested in any of them. Yeah, that's pretty much how they're doing. The agents are literally calling the schools to encourage them to tamper. And
is there any, hey, can you recall in this modern age of NIL, can you recall of anybody getting in trouble for tampering?
No. I don't know how you get in trouble.
No, because to me, it seems like it's against the law. I mean, when I called Caleb to work with me, I mean, technically, I guess that was tampering. You worked for another company. So, but it wouldn't be fair for you not to get a phone call. I mean, that's not right. That's not the American way. I think that tampering is just something that you're going to have to deal with forever. I don't know that you can ever stop that.
No, I don't really think you can, but the coaches, here's the thing, they're getting plausible deniability because according to an SEC NIL collective member, people everybody's agreeing to not talk about it because everybody's doing it. And, and so basically the rule is, it's kind of an unwritten rule of like, what is the analogy, Dave? Like, you all have to have your feet in the boat, and if one of you steps your foot out, the whole boat sinks or flips over. And that's
so
basic.
You have to do it to compete, is what you're telling me.
You have to do it to compete, and nobody's snitching because they all have to do it. So if one person dimes somebody out, it's like put it this way, it's like gang violence. You've seen those documentaries. Like, nobody's snitching on a rival gang member or anything like that because like they all know they're in this fight with each other, and it's like if one person does it, the whole operation could blow up. And that's what's happening right now with tampering. Basically, the agents have figured out. Here's what the SEC collective said. The agents have, and I also said the agents have figured out the model and football having 2 portal windows, which actually exacerbates the problem because the kids are constantly in play. It's kind of nonstop. And the players and coaches have plausible deniability because if the agents are facilitating everything, literally the players and the coaches can be like, well, I didn't talk to the kid. They can literally say that now. And the coaches are letting the agents do all the dirty work.
All right, Caleb, here's the problem I have with this is that Josh Heupel's, well, let me start with this. Do you believe Ricky Gibson was tampered with?
Yes. Oh, I'm not. Okay, put it this way. I'm not sure. There's a strong possibility Ricky Gibson is just playing the you guys need me, so I can negotiate a higher contract right now.
I think everybody worth a darn is being tampered with. Like literally everybody. I mean, if I can, and I used to cover recruiting, if I could find a young man on social media and that sorts of things, it's not like the coaches can't. I mean, you can get a hold of anybody if you want to, Caleb. And I think Ricky Gibson was tampered with. I think every significant player on Tennessee's roster has been tampered with at some point. You develop these relationships, and now the coaches know not to give up because of the new transfer portal rules. I think tampering is just a way of life. Now, tie it to why spring games are getting canceled. As I remind you, the UPS store Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. The link right down below. So how's this canceling spring games?
So basically, tampering is canceling spring games because the fact of the matter is, because of the 2 portal windows, there's a fear that like these spring games, which are more out in the open, is allowing more access basically to the players and allowing people to see more things. So it's basically, if everybody's tampering, then when you have a spring game and that's an open market for anybody to be able to come and watch your guys, you're basically just telling agents, hey, come target our guys.
Who all has canceled their spring game?
I'm not sure all the schools that have canceled spring
Well,
games.
I mean, not all, but who are any big names out there? I mean, does Tennessee do this at some point? I will go ahead and go on record. This will be Tennessee's last spring game. I firmly believe that. I know Josh Heupel hates it. Most every coach hates it. And and Derek brings up a great point with Gibson. I bet it was FSU calling. I do too, because of the ties there. And listen, you could just go to Squirrel White and say, do you care to give me Ricky Gibson's number? That's how easy it is.
Oh, yeah, no. So basically the high profile ones are Texas, USC, Nebraska. NC State was the most recent to do it. You're looking at, I believe, Kansas, Temple, Colorado, and Kentucky. They've all canceled their spring games. And look, and like they're all giving different reasons, but it's like very obvious that everybody's worried about tampering. And Matt Rule basically said, Nebraska said it was for some weird reason, but then Matt Rule came out and said, like, his exact quote was, the word tampering doesn't exist anymore. It's just absolute free, open, common market. I don't want these guys all being able to watch our guys. That's what he said about having a spring game at Nebraska. Basically, they don't want scouts or agents or recruiters from other teams seeing what their players can do in the spring game, because this portal window that opens after the spring. I guess the best way you can, no pun intended, tamp down on this, I mean, I don't know if you can, but do you close the portal window after the spring, Dave? Do you just say you got the winner and that's it?
How can you do that? Because legally, you can't tell somebody that, no, you can't call somebody about a job.
You're right.
There has to be a union, and it goes back to the column that I wrote. I mean, there absolutely has to be a union. And I know people don't like to hear about that, but that's where they have to go. And let me get your thoughts on the message board, the chat box, whatever we call it. And that is, do you care about the spring game? Because I don't think that most people do. And but Caleb, I'd suggested maybe a skills challenge or something like that. But that would actually that would showcase your athleticism more.
Well, there's been talk on, you're right. I mean, you're right. It's, and that's the problem. There's been talk recently that college football is opting in, and there's encouragement that coaches are considering an NFL style OTA as a replacement for spring games. CBS reports, Brandon Marcello of CBS actually reported that about 2 weeks ago, that basically college football programs are kind of going to use this like OTAs in the NFL. And that's what they kind of want their spring games to be. And I mean, I don't even think they want their players out giving out. And this is the other part with NIL. And this is the crazy part, Dave. Players got to be more visible to get the NIL money, show up for this, show up for that, whatever. Doesn't more visibility open the door for create more avenues for people to contact them?
Well, I don't know that if they show up at a shoe store and they talk about how awesome those Reeboks are, that a college coach is going to say, oh, I've got to have him on my team. I'm not exactly sure what you're driving at there. I think ultimately it's going to be play on the field. But here's the other thing. You realize we are so close, and I'm calling it right now. We are so close to a major scandal in college football. Because here's what's going to happen. And for those that aren't old enough, Ron Zook was involved when he was a coach at Tennessee of sending Tennessee's playbook to Gainesville and blah, blah, blah. So this stuff can't happen. These coaches do talk. Here's what's going to happen. Either a reporter that covers practice, what little bit of practice you were able to see, is going to say to another coach at another school, hey, this guy's a real standout player for you. You might want to reach out to him. Or you're going to see the practice tape turned over to another recruiter at another school. Don't tell me that can't happen, because I knew someone that was tied in with the videographer at a school, and he got tape of practice every day. So that's not outside the realm of possibility, Caleb. And then you're able to scout these guys and you know exactly who to call.
Yeah.
I mean, is that a conspiracy thing, or is that real?
No, I think that's absolutely real. You're absolutely going to see teams like one. You've already kind of seen that. I don't know if you know, but not Josh Hype, but Bobby Petrino, when he was at Louisville years ago, when Dave Clawson was at Wake Forest, I think Bobby Petrino had a disgruntled staff member. There was a disgruntled staff member at Wake Forest that Bobby Petrino basically put on his payroll to start sending him Wake Forest playbooks, allegedly. I mean, and he says he wasn't involved, but consider the source. Bobby Petrino is one of the biggest liars in the history of college football. So I think that, look, you're going to see a lot more of that. I totally agree with you going forward. And here's the crazier part. With tampering, and this is even more insane, what about coaches being contacted? I mean, the only thing I'll say about tampering that we wonder about, Dave, is tampering with coaches has been going on for an even longer time. I mean, how many times have coaches been at one school, but they're in contact with another school during the middle of the season?
All the time.
All the time. Coordinators, assistants. I mean, so that's why it doesn't worry me too much. I mean, guys, go back and look at history. Look back at the history of the 1969 Gator Bowl between Tennessee and Florida, which Florida won. Doug Dickey took the Florida job the next day. There's a lot of people suspicious about what happened in that Gator Bowl.
Yeah, he was definitely okay. David says the spring game is for the fans. It helps drive fan interest. This may kill some new fan interest with canceling these games. Totally agree. The spring game is the game that you went to for a lot of fans if you didn't have enough money to have tickets in the fall. And you could go in for $5. And back in the day, they even had a fall day, or I can't even remember what they called it, but they had like a autograph signing. Did you ever go to one of those things, Caleb, when you were over there? Did you ever cover one of those?
One time. It
was actually kind of neat. Because
again, that's a way to just open the door for agents to contact the players.
Yeah, that's dead as a doornail.
Well, and I want to address what Timothy said, because Timothy, this is because it's a super chat and we appreciate it, Timothy. But this is something Jimmy talked about, because you're saying, Timothy, then since it's pay to play, put them on a 2 to 3 year contract. Timothy, on principle, you're right. The problem is if you're doling out 2 to 3 year contracts and no other school is doing that, then you're not going to be able to get the player, because players are going to pick you if other schools aren't doing it. The only option in that point, Dave, is to offer 2 to 3 year contracts that are exorbitantly bigger than what any other school is offering.
Yeah.
And
I think we're talking about 50% more or so.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I was suggesting earlier. Like if a player's getting $500,000 from basically every school in the SEC, you say sign a 2-3 year contract for $750,000. That I think is doable. But again, you're getting into how much money is actually out there. I mean, there's a notion out there that Tennessee's tapped out as far as its budget because of NIL. If that's the case, then they're not going to be the team that's doing it, and other schools are probably in that situation as well.
Yeah, I agree. And look, if they could up more money, they would. I mean, that's where you get the talent fees and things like that. So guys, this is going to be, look, this is just how it's going to work out long term. And I mean, Heupel was already secretive with stuff he was running anyway. Now, the difference, it's funny with the OTAs, this, Dave, NFL programs are hard. I mean, NFL franchises are hardly secretive in what they're running, right? There's nothing secretive about what they're doing. That's so talent-based. It's Madden, like we talked about. If I'm right, isn't NFL coaching in game? It's basically Madden the whole way. You're calling it play to play, aren't you? Pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You don't run a system pretty much in NFL programs. I think that I wonder if college is going that way. You can't stay secretive for too long. Put it that way. You just can't stay secretive for too long the way college is going.